It's always good to talk about the message. It's one thing to hear, it's another thing to be a doer of the word, and how do we apply it? So if you were one of the sailors that were on that boat, and Paul, he gathered them all together. He's a prisoner, and he's gathering them together, and he said, take courage. I had an angel visit me, and it's from the God whom I serve and I believe. How would you, as a sailor at that point, what would your reaction be?
How would I, as a sailor? First of all, I can't handle storms on the sea. I think I have a very weak stomach. So I'd be like, yes, please get us out of here. But I think I would say they probably would have heard stories about Paul. Also, the centurion treated him really well. So there was something special about Paul. So I guess in that moment, when you're desperate, you might be like, you know what? Okay, yes, anything that can get us out of here. And so in their circumstance, they really had to come to trust Paul. And it's amazing how God used Paul and his life to save the 276 souls. And I think about that, then about how God will use us to save other people. And sometimes you don't think about it that way, but in this case, they were saved, all the souls in that boat, because of Paul.
Right.
And I think about how important it is for us to be people that are listening well to God, that are obeying, and are people of prayer, because our lives will make a huge impact and have a ripple effect on so many other people that you might not even be aware of. But your life matters, and so your relationship with God matters. Your relationship with God will actually save souls.
I'm so glad you said that. That's exactly what the thought process. I was the same vein, where they recognize something very specific in him, and God allows other people to see that in us, or should see that in us, that they know whom they believe, and they're persuaded he's able to keep what he's committed, what he has said. And that should be a testimony to the people around. Maybe I don't have the faith for it, but I know you do. And I'm going to believe the God whom you serve, because you have such a strong faith and courage in him. I'm going to align myself with you.
And Paul was very bold. He would speak of God's goodness, of his power, of him even seeing an angel. He might have thought, you know what, people are going to think I'm crazy. But no, he was like bold. He's like, this is what happened, and this is what will happen. So we too, I think we need to learn from Paul and the other apostles and the disciples, and do what Jesus told them to do, is to be a bold witness. Do not be ashamed of me, but speak boldly of what I'm doing, what I've done. And I think the same needs to be for us, is we need to ask God, God, give me the courage, the boldness to speak up in the middle of my storm. Or even if you see someone else in a storm, that you would speak of the one who can still their storm.
Exactly. Yeah, Jesus is still the Prince of Peace. And if you're not in the storm with someone, how do you help someone? You're not in that storm, but you want to help somebody that is in a storm. First of all, it's just to get permission. I want to, can I share with you? Can I share about the Prince of Peace? And if the answer is, oh, I know him, if it's a fellow believer, someone in your life group that's going through a hardship, is going through a storm, you gather around them in prayer. That your prayer makes a difference, and gathering around them and helping them to take courage. And don't get the discouragement that others have said, oh, I know someone. Worst thing you can do to someone that's going through a hard time is, oh, I know someone that I work with, her sister's uncle's brother went through the same thing, and it was really rough. I really feel bad for you. That is not what they need to hear. If there's any place that believers should receive strength and courage from, it should be from fellow believers. And they should be the ones that are saying, no, God's word says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. May your thought life, do you have all those thoughts that are coming? Because the thoughts that come when you're in a storm, let's just admit it, they're negative. When Dave shared about Chelsea and Josh, there was a lot of negative words that were spoken to them and to us about his condition, about our grandson's condition. There was a lot of thoughts, a lot of words that we could have spoken because of the thoughts that twirl around in your head. But again, to the point of how we're so proud of them, the way that they chose to say, yeah, this is the reality, but we're going to choose to see God's grace in this situation, and we're going to continue to commit to him. And you know what they did quite more often, multiple times, is the two of them took communion. They would just stop and say, that was a bad report. We need Jesus, to see Jesus in the middle. The best place to do that is to partake in communion and remember what Jesus did. That's a good place for us to go into that place as well when we're in a storm. We have to put ourselves in remembrance. God said, put yourself in remembrance. He says, put me in remembrance. And the reason that he says that, he doesn't forget. It's not that God forgot what he said. It's to help us to remember what he said.
We're the forgetful beings that forget of God's goodness and faithfulness, and we need to remind ourselves. And with communion and us remembering what Christ did for us, I think it increases our faith. What it does, it encourages us to know that ultimately Christ was victorious over the grave, death, and sin, and he was risen from the dead. And so one day, we too, this body that will be one day buried will be raised as Christ comes back. So there's that future, right? That's that future hope that we have, that even though I might suffer now for a little period of time, there would be an infinite amount of time where I no longer will suffer. And so it keeps putting that in perspective for me, at least when I look at my storms in life, that this storm will not last forever.
Yeah, and that was Paul's encouragement to the sailors. Sailors, we are going to get to the other side.
That's it, yeah.
And that's God's word for us today. God bless you. Thank you for staying with us. Enjoy
Love you guys.
the rest of your day.